Well, we're going to shift gears here and take a higher look. And last week, the last couple of weeks, we've been taking a look at the life of Samson and the inconsistencies of Samson's life. His parents being obedient to the Spirit of the Lord, and when the Lord came to them, the angel of the Lord came and talked with Samson's parents and gave them instructions that of raising Samson as a Nazarite, and God honored the parents because they were obedient. And we see that in the scriptures, that in Judges, that it says that God blessed Samson. But we see some inconsistencies as Samson grows into manhood, and we see what was taking place there with taking his eyes off God and deceiving his parents, and putting his parents in a difficult state when it came to being defiled with not of their own knowing, because Samson didn't tell them what he had done. And so we see that dishonesty there. But right now we're going to take a look at Samson wanted what he wanted. He saw this woman in Timnah, this this Philistine woman, and we talked about his parents tried to talk to him about, hey, this they don't believe the way we do. They don't believe in the one true God. They worship idols. But he saw this woman in Timnah, and he wanted to go through the proceedings to make her his wife. And so we're going to take this now, where his father and he go to this woman there in Timnah, and we're going to be taking a look here in Judges chapter 14, and we're going to start in verse 10. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there, for the young men used to do so. And it happened, when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. And I want to stop right there, because these aren't the buds that grew up with Samson. He went to have a feast. I'm getting married to this woman, and these people, these other young men that were there, that probably knew her, but really had didn't know Samson, and they latched on. And they invited their companions, 30 more, to join in this feast. And we see here that there was no connection. There was really no history. And again, Samson was in another land, and dealing with and getting entangled with another people that didn't know the one true God, and they worshiped idols. So right off we see a union here that of two people that don't have the same God. And his parents tried to warn him, but we see here he wanted to move forward, and he wanted what he wanted. And we see there's a feast here, and he gets these 30 one of the companions of these other young men. They brought 30. So here we see Samson, they're having this feast, and then in verse 12, then Samson said to them, "Let me pose a riddle to you." I'm going to stop there right now too. Here we are, Samson at this feast, and he's playing games. And again, the enemy knows our weaknesses, and you just wonder, you know, when you're looking at Samson's life, was he, there seemed to be that not a real lack of focus. And he was kind of just out doing his own thing, wanting to have a good time, and not really looking at the people that he was attaching himself to and communing with, so to speak. He was just in his own realm, and at that point his eyes weren't on God. Now, God's eyes were there. God had a plan, and God's will was going to be done, even through Samson. And it speaks to us. We're all flawed. We all have our weaknesses, but God still uses us. God still blesses us, even when we fall. And we see here that God's will be done. And I think I've mentioned this before, I think of Jonah. God wanted to use Jonah to bring a message. Jonah didn't want to do that, and he's trying to run from God. But God had a plan, and God wanted to use Jonah, and God did use Jonah. We saw, how God had to get Jonah's attention, but he did, and it was God's will that was moved forward through Jonah. And the same thing here with Samson. God still used Samson. God's spirit still came upon Samson, and we'll see here in coming chapters how God mightily went against the Philistines. God's will was being done as he was going against these idol-worshipping Philistines that were oppressing his people. But we see here, Samson, verse 12. Then Samson said to them, "Let me pose a riddle to you. If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within the 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing." And they said to him, "Pose your riddle, that we may hear it." So he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Samson's wife, 'Entice your husband, that he may explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is that not so?'" So we see here now, they can't figure it out. They don't know what the riddle meant. So then they went to their the person that they really had a relationship with, and they threatened her that they were going to hurt her and her family, her father. So there's the influence there. The enemy also knew the weaknesses of the woman there, that Philistine woman, and what pressure would need to come to bear for her to betray Samson, her betrothed wife. So we see here the pressure came on, and that was the pressure that they brought. Those companions really weren't close to Samson. They had no relationship with Samson, but there was a connection with the woman, and her family situation, and they knew just how to get what they needed. So they put the pressure and threatened her. Now we're going to stop there, and we're going to see how this all plays out. But again, when I think of Samson, when I was growing up, and in Sunday school, we would would hear the stories of Samson. But from my viewpoint as a kid, I was looking at, look at the victories that he had, almost like that Superman character or a superhero, where he was doing extraordinary feats. And that was the focus at my young age, but not to really see the relationships and how faithful Samson was. Yes, we saw God's Spirit coming upon him, and he did mighty things when against the Philistines, but there was also that underlying Samson was going his own way, and really found himself in weak situations and falling short all along the way. But God still blessed, and God still was using Samson. And I think that, as a young age, we saw and heard the stories of Samson and Samson and Delilah and the many victories and the many Philistines that were defeated by Samson. But there was also his life and how he was living that life, and where he took his eyes off God, and there were consequences to that life, to the way Samson was living. And when Samson, those failures that he, even though God was blessing him, even though God's Spirit would come upon him, there were some consequences that we will see in later verses here of the consequences that caught up with Samson, and those times of weakness and falling short, and the enemy using that same playbook against Samson. And that's a lesson for you and I. Satan knows our weaknesses, and he will keep coming with that same playbook. And I'm thinking of if you think of a football game or almost any sport, if you've got a game plan that you've gone in a football game or a basketball game, and let's say football, and your attack is you know that the team that you're coming against is weak when it comes to the passing attack. So your coach says, we're going to pass every single down. We're going to pass until they figure it out. And if they don't figure it out, then that's their weakness, and we're going to go after it and go after it and go after it till the game is over. And that's how Satan comes against us. He knows where those weak areas in our life are, and he will keep doing the same thing, the same temptations, and because he knows that that's our weakness, and we fall for it. And God wants us. That's why we need to focus and realize that Satan is coming after us, and that we need to rely on God's strength and to resist the enemy. But what I want to emphasize is that Satan knows our weaknesses, and he uses that same playbook against us time and time and time again. He doesn't change it up. He knows what will draw us away from God, and he uses that against us. And I think that is a picture that we see going on in Samson's life, and we will see in further chapters there is there is a slide that takes place, and there are consequences to Samson taking playing loose when it came to kind of playing in the world, so to speak, and we see the consequences that catch up with Samson. But right now, we're going to leave it here with Satan also knows Samson's wife, that Timnah woman from the Philistine, that she had a weakness, and that threat came against her family, her father, and her burning her home down. And we will next week, taking a higher look, we'll see what takes place and what betrayal takes place when it comes to Samson and this Philistine woman. And that is my perspective and comments.